So to start, I want to do a painting tonight of a what I call a simple girl. Um, I don't know exactly what form she's going to take, but there'll be a face, there'll be hair, and there'll be, things that will make her recognizable as a human. But she'll also be very whimsical. And I just really need to do this because I want to do some writing on the hair part. And then I know I'll be covering that up with paint. And I'll probably also do it on her clothing down here as well. And then I can cover that up. That's just something I need to do for myself tonight. So to start, the way I almost always start, and I'm going to even show you a little bit of a trick. You can decide if you want to have a face that's like an oval shape. I'm going to pull this back just a skinch, an oval shape, or you can do something that is more of like a round shape. Sometimes I do trace and sometimes I don't. And sometimes it just helps me to figure out where I want the face to be placed. Like, do I want the face to be straight on? Do I want the face to be kind of curved? Do I want the face to be going this way? In which case a tip of the head might be this kind of way. So it just helps me to think about placement. But for the purposes of this lesson, this is going to be a really big, for me, a really big oval face off to the side a little bit. Cause I just want there to be hair. And so there's just going to be a gesture because this is how I feel when I'm confused. I cock my head and I'm just like, what the hell? So that's what I'm a little bit going for here. It may not turn out that way, but that's a little bit of my intention. And it may not be that pronounced. It may be just a little bit of a cock instead of just a straight on. So I sometimes like to start that way. And when I do, I like to sometimes just draw a little bit of a reference line for myself. And you can draw a reference line or not. And I am going to just encourage you to be loose with this and just make some kind of a loose oval. I do it a little bit light, so you might not be able to see it very much, but I'm just made like a loose oval here for the girl's face. And that's pretty much all I need to just know for my face. And coming out of that neck or that face, I like to mess around and have really long necks. And I'm not exactly sure why I do that, but there's something, I don't even know why. It immediately creates whimsy when you play around with proportions like that, right? Just create something whimsical. So I'm going to create a shoulder or something vaguely shoulder-like. And I'm going to create something vaguely shoulder-like over here. And just so you know, I just taped this thing down, so there will be pink under here. It's not going to be a clean white border, which will be fine. But just so you know, it's just not going to be a clean white border for me tonight. So I am going to trace my little shape here, or maybe I'll continue it afterwards when I lift that up. I'm not sure, but at this moment, just kind of going this route. All right, so I have something that looks like a head and a neck and a shoulder or something. And I haven't thought about her clothes or anything at all, but I want to pay some attention to the face. So for this one, and I just want everyone to be really loose with this, I am going to start on the brow and I'm going to just bring something down that looks vaguely like a brow connected to, a nose or something. And I'm going to leave this here because I know I'm going to want some hair. I can go over it. It's fine. All right. So I know that this hair is going to cover this girl's eye a little bit, but there's going to be a little bit of eye peeking out. So here's my rough nose. And for me, clearly you can see like it doesn't have to be like a realistic nose, but once I get this shape done, then I can kind of add those little wings of the nose a little bit. And the nostril is just a little bit of darkness in the place where that little wing meets the nose. And so that's all I need. I just need a little hint of something that looks vaguely like a nose. And this is going to be colored over and all that stuff, but I'm just trying to get outlines. And then I want to get her mouth. And for me, I like to do very whimsical mouths. It's like the shape of an M. And if you make the little curves of the M going up, if you make them going up like this is, like these are, then she'll look a little less angry. If you make your M going just straight down like this, she'll look a little bit, or he or she will look a little bit angrier. So mine's kind of going up the littlest bit. And then I make 2 mountains up over the top. And then I connect the bottom. So she's got a mouth. It's fine. She definitely looks like she's perturbed a little bit already. Her mouth is a little off from the lines, but it's fine. Then remember, the last 2 weeks, I always talk about where you want to put your eyes. So if I want it to be more childlike, they're lower, but tonight I'm going to raise them up a little bit, make them a little higher. So you can even draw the line if you want to, or not. And then I've already put this brow line in here a little, just as a reference. And then I'm doing the same thing that I almost always do, which is I create that little almond rainbow shape up and over on both sides. And like I said, I know I'm going to be doing some hair over here, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this eye. It's probably going to end up very covered. And then I'm going to put the line for the lid. And then I do that big wide U shape for the iris. And then I do another U shape for the pupil. And that U shape that you do for the pupil can be more in the center. It can be looking up. I want her to kind of be looking out. So I put it up, coming up from the top, but you can play around with those kinds of things wherever you want the pupil. If you put the pupil low down, it gives you a totally different kind of a look. Maybe we'll play around with that next week a little bit, pupil placement. Same thing over here. I'm going to put in my pupil or my iris, and then I'm going to kind of put in my pupil here, and that's going to end up getting covered. So now we just have to think about what you might want to use to paint this thing, or to, for her eyes and everything. And so I have to think a little bit about my color palette. And I think I might go back with my purples and blues tonight. What did I do last week? Did I do purples and blues too with that out? What was last week? God, I've had so many people. Was the owl last week? The owl was last week. Yeah. So I kind of had everything in there. So that's okay. I'm also going to think a little bit about her hairline. So I'm just going to make a little swooshy curly line. I want her hair to come up and around. You've probably seen other people do this. I'm not like this is not unique to me. Sometimes when I want hair to seem kind of mermaidy or flowing out behind or blowy, but if you don't want it to be blowing up, you can totally make a line going down, and the hair will be coming down around her shoulders. So it's totally up to you how you want that hair to go. So hopefully you understand what I'm saying there, is that if you don't want the hair to go up and off the page there, all you have to do is bring the line kind of down around here, and then you've got long hair happening, or short hair, or what do you want. But I'm going for something like that tonight. And then I'm gonna make this line of hair kind of over here. And I'm just going to probably make something like that. So she's got this, this is going to be all hair over here. So that's just what I'm wanting. That's why I call it kind of a simple face, because you don't have to worry too much about perfection, because the eyes, not all that much detail is going to be showing. For this next part of the lesson, I actually decided to color in the pupils first, and usually I do that in a black, and I tried to do it with a purple this time, and I actually end up going over it later with black. But what I am showing you is that I'm grabbing all my colors, I'm gathering my colors together to when I am ready to color the irises. And tonight I'm going to use purple, and so I have 4 different shades of purple: a dark, a middle dark, a light, and then a white. And so that's what is happening here. At this stage of my creative process, I am going to work out some of my emotions and write some things in her hair. And this is just a practice that I do with my non-dominant hand, and it really helps me to release some of the things that I'm struggling with on any given day. I am not a bad judge of character. these are things I've been really wrestling with lately. My intuition, I trust my intuition, but sometimes I'm very slow on things, and there's just a lot of cruddy people out there. I am in my integrity. I can only control my own responses. So I'm just writing, and it's sloppy, and it's my left hand, and then I might. So those are all affirmations. Instead of beating myself up and being like, I'm a bad judge of character and I picked the, I try to reframe it for the positive. So I actually feel better even just doing that. Believe it or not, that already makes me feel better. It's such a fascinating thing. So I've got that scribbled there. It's not going to stay like that. The thing that I want to experiment with next is I want to fill in this girl's face with colored pencils. So I have a bunch of colored pencils that it's funny, I rarely use some of these colors. It's a funny thing. I definitely have the favorite colors that I gravitate toward. So I've grabbed a whole bunch of neutrals. Some of them are peach, beige. Here's a beige peach. Here's a putty beige. Here's a cloud blue. Another peach, I guess, and then sky blue light. So they're just sort of like neutrals. If you went to the paint store and you got something really light and it wouldn't really, just looks light. So I'm going to grab those and I'm going to start to think a little bit about what I want to do with the face. And so going around the face, just the way I normally would, I am going to decide that this right side of the face is going to have sort of those more natural colors, and then this other side of the face will have some more of those blues in there. So I am going right up and over my paint, and like I said, hopefully yours is grabbing. And what I'm doing is just like we would normally do around the face. I am going right up to that blue line that we already created, and I'm just finding the places where I would normally have darker areas on the face. And I am choosing one color, and it doesn't matter which, you just decide. And that is going to be the color where your shadows would go. So I'm using this putty beige to kind of go underneath the mouth a little bit. It's going to go a little underneath the nose a little bit. It's going to come up and around the eyes a little bit, because we all have little shadows under our eyes. A little bit we do. And around the nose. So I'm just doing this. If you do not feel like exerting this much energy with the colored pencils and you're like, oh Lord, I don't want to play this, you can use paint, you can use watercolors. So I'm just using a little bit of pencil. I just want to see how this works initially. So I'm checking something out. I'm trying something new here for myself. And then I'll probably get up and under the neck a little bit and pull that down. I guess I need to think a little bit for a minute about clothing. So I guess I'm going to put her into some kind of high-necked goody, because I feel like a goody. Putting her in a little high-necked thing there, which was just like making a W, in case you didn't see me do that. I just made like a little W. You can make whatever clothes you want. You can put your person in a high-necked thing. You can put her in a V-neck. I mean, it's like paper dolls. You get to decide what your person is wearing, or maybe you don't want anything. Maybe you just want her to have a big necklace or something like that. That's fine too. She doesn't have to have clothes. Like I said, I've been feeling a little like a goody two shoes or something. So getting taken advantage of, like somebody put sucker on my forehead. That's what I feel like. So I'm going all around this here, up and around. So those are kind of my darks that I just brought around what was already there. And then I'm going to grab the next color that I have. And on this right side of the face, I am actually grabbing my beige peach. I don't even know how different this is going to look. It's pretty similar, actually, but I'm going to keep going with it. And same way as we kind of did those eyes, I'm going to ombre this around a little bit. It's a little bit peachier. It's a little bit warmer. So I'm pulling this down a bit. There'll be a warmer cheek coming too.
What I'm doing now is I am just filling in that mostly right side of her face with the same tones, sort of those peachy tones, beigey tones. I'm sort of trying to keep them to the right side as if there's some kind of a light source over there casting some kind of a shadow over there, or some kind of a light over there. It doesn't really matter what colors you do over there. It could be anything, but I do try to kind of split the face in half sometimes, just for fun. So, but don't get all hung up on this. You could do anything. It could be any colors that you like. After I drop all those warmer colors in onto the right side of the face, then I start to think about the left side. And for this, I'm grabbing these very, very pale neutral blue colors. One's like a sky blue, one's like a cloud blue. They're very, very neutral. And but again, you don't have to do this in a blue. You could do it in yellow. Just grab 3 or 4 of the similar kind of tones and it will work out beautifully. And now I'm doing the same exact thing I did on the right side of the face with the left side of the face. I'm just bringing that color around. I'm putting a little bit on her forehead, on her eyes, onto her neck. I am also pressing quite hard. I use these Prismacolor pencils. They're very waxy and they layer beautifully. I am definitely pressing, using a lot of pressure, and that means I use several different colors because they do get a little bit flat. The point gets a little flat and you do not have to be afraid to use your sharpener in between. At this point, I did decide that I didn't love her purple pupils, so I grabbed my black Posca marker and went over her pupils, and then I used the purple to make her have, to really highlight her irises instead of her pupils. So that's what I spend a fair amount of time doing here.
All right, I have to think a little bit about her clothes, but maybe I'll end up leaving that kind of pinkish. And now I want to deal with the hair a little bit. So I have options, and this is where you get to make your decisions as well. So what I would recommend is think about the color paper that you're working on with your own unique background. So mine has, the lips are already pink, and that means the shirt is rather pink. Her nose is still looking quite pinkish because of, that was the color. So just be thinking about that. And all I would say is that we're going to want to have some kind, well, honestly, you can go any way you want, but I know that I'm going to paint this girl's hair in, and I'm going to make her hair, I'm going to go for black hair. I'm going to do that very simply because I'm going to want to do some writing on her hair. So I'm going to go with black hair, but you could do brown, you could do gray, you could do any, white, you could do whatever color you want. I'm going to go with black. And then you may want to think about doing some color in this area as well. So let me think how, so I was just going to say, just be thinking the next instruction that I give you is going to be to just be thinking about like the relationship between the face and what colors are left showing, and you can really go any which, you can't really go wrong with this. But what I usually tell people is either for this background stuff, either go with a total opposite. So like the opposite of like red is green, the opposite of hot pink is a teal. And I only know that because I know the color chart, but so just be thinking about what would be an opposite. If I wanted to go with the purple of the eye, the opposite of purple is like a very bright, or like it's like an orangey color. That's why a lot of the sports teams have these like opposite colors, like orange and blue and things like that. So So you can either go and choose a complete opposite color, or choose a color if you want to make it all very uniform. You might want to choose the friends that go, the complementary colors, which would be the colors right next to this color on the chart. So any kind of a purple, any kind of a blue would be, or a violet, whatever, would look really nice with this color palette. So it's just a matter of how much you want how much color you want in your piece. You cannot blow this. The most important thing is what color hair are you going to want to do? And then what do you want to do in the background, if anything? So I am going to think a little bit about this background because that's what I'm thinking right now.
Now I am thinking about what I want to do under her hair, and I am going to grab my stencil. You can use any stencil you want. It does not have to be anything like this. Or if you don't have a stencil, you could use stamps. I like the purple in her eyes, so I decided that I'm just going to find a similar color paint. And the way I stencil is I grab a little bit of a sponge and I put some paint on my palette, and then I bang out the excess and then really just go over the stencil. It does not have to be perfect, and it doesn't matter if it goes a little bit over into her face, her neck, her bottom of her chin or something, but you don't want to get a lot of it. So have a good time with that and bang out all your frustrations. Stenciling and stippling is very fun. Next step involves going into her eyes a little bit. I didn't like that the area that would normally be sort of that white color of her eye is kind of pink. So I am grabbing an eggshell colored pencil, and I'm going to go right over those pink areas just to kind of brighten up her eyes a little bit. And then I actually will also use a white in the very corners of her eyes.
And I'm adding just some highlights with this white pencil as well. So there might be some lights around the face and maybe a little bit around the nose. I'm just playing around, whatever seems to be calling to me. She may need some pinkier cheeks later, but this is just a blending stick that I'm using. So you know, it's just a blender. Cool. I am ready to think about her hair. So I'm going with the black. I'm going with the black hair. I could do anything. I could do blue hair. I'm going with black. So getting my acrylic black. I am using a brush with a beveled edge. It's the angular edge. I have one of these leftover sushi platters, which I love to use for painting. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to trace the line, but I'm going to go a little bit over, right? Like a little bit over where the stencil was. So I'm not so concerned about staying inside my line here, because I just want to, I want to get all that covered. So I'm just creating that little line, and then I'm going to go around her face. And again, I'm going a little bit over the line, and it doesn't matter. You can go as far over as you like. You decide that for yourself.
I am going to add a little bit of more black paint around her face. And then I load up my brush and I just go right over all those words that I created earlier. I just completely obliterate them. And nobody has to know what you were thinking, what you were feeling, what your emotions were. It's just very satisfying to go right over all of those scribbles.
You could put a big earring on your person if you want to, you could do a big hoopy thing, whatever, but you can add whatever details you like. You could do a cute little necklace around the long neck, whatever you want. All right, I'm gonna pop this into my water. So now I got to think a little bit about what I want to have happening down here around her outfit. And I'm going to want to think a little bit, just a little bit, about like my fish, right? Like, do I want my little fishies? And oh, by the way, you can totally decide, I don't want to do that on this one. That is a legitimate decision, but I do like this idea of these fish kind of crossing over her a little bit. And I don't know, maybe they'll even like like they're swimming over, like maybe I'll put one over her neck or something. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it looked like she's looking through a fishbowl.
I'm adding my collage element. I am using some fish that I actually used in another project, and I'm just playing around a little bit to think about placement. I have sort of a rule in my own head that I try to do things in odd numbers. So 3s, 5s, 7s, 11s, those kinds of things. And so here I'm just playing around to see where these little fishies might go, where it feels balanced. This is sort of an intuitive thing, and you just have to play around with it. Next, I am grabbing my watercolors and I am going to add a little bit of a watery look to her face.
So I'm going right up and over her lid, as per usual, with my blue watercolor, right up over the colored pencil, and that was already over the paint. And you can see it gives her this like inky eye, right? She's got sort of like an inky watery color eye. And yet the stuff comes through, like it will still, you'll see what you did underneath it. And if you want to, you can come under the eye if that's something that you like to accentuate it further. Sometimes I like to, sometimes I don't. And I'm going to add that watercolor. I'm going to pull that all around the nose, just a little, just giving it some highlights here. It's okay if it doesn't grab everywhere. Just trust the process. Let the watercolor grab where it needs to grab. It will dry lighter. It will definitely be drying lighter than it is at this moment.
This is where the magic really starts to happen. Use your watercolor over top the acrylic and just let the water do its work. Don't be afraid to drop some colors in there. I'm using a blue color. I'm using it in the places where I know that there would be shadows, which are any places where one thing would be over top another. So her hair over her cheek, her eyelids underneath her brows, around her nose, under her mouth, and also where her neckline is going to be against her neck. I apply some plain clear water to my character's cheeks, and then I grab a little bit of pink and I'm going to apply it straight into that water, and that will allow me to get a little bit of a pinky color on her cheeks. It does not have to be perfect, and just realize that when the paint dries, it dries much, much lighter than it does when it is first applied.
Good. Okay, clothing. So this is the time where you can decide, do you want to paint? Do you want to use watercolor? Do you want to leave it as it is? Do you want to draw some polka dots? Do you want to use a stamp? What would you like to do? I am feeling like a stamp might be the way to go. Maybe some color on this collar, maybe a white collar or something. I'm going to grab a stamp.
I grabbed my stamp and I get it nice and inky, and I just pressed down in a couple of places and it gave me just a nice little bit of detail that I wanted. And after that, I grabbed some plain white acrylic paint and I decided to fill in her collar with a nice thick coating of the paint. Now that things are starting to take shape, I'm looking at my girl's face, and her pink lips are perfectly cute, but I decided to grab my Jean Davenport very pigmented watercolor and try it over her lips. It is very hot pink, but I kind of like it, so I'm happy that I did it, and I encourage you to play with different lip colors in your pieces as well. Now I am just putting some darkening a few areas just to define where her shoulders are, and then I have to think a little bit about what the heck I'm doing for the collage elements. The next 5 minutes of video has been fast forwarded very fast because really what I'm thinking about is where to put my collaged fish. And it takes me a long time, and I'm just putting them on and taking them off, and it's very personal, and you just have to decide where you want your own elements to go. So that is what is happening here. Because my painting has so much purple and pink in it, it's really just two notes essentially, I decided I wanted to use another color, and I am going to use my watercolor to my goldfish to make them look a little bit more golden. So I'm dipping into my orange, and then I dip into my middle color orange, and then I even grab some paint to go over the top that's a little bit more yellowy. Honestly, now I'm just working on some finishing touches. There are a few areas where the stencil went over her neck, so I'm just recovering that line by using my original colored pencil in that same bluey purple color. And I do that in a few spaces, and it just helps to bring those lines back in and establish what's in the foreground from what is in the background. I knew that I wanted to put some words on this girl, and I've decided to go with the words, "Let karma do all the work." So I was thinking about spacing, and I at first grabbed my Signo Uniball marker and started to do it in cursive handwriting, and I did not like how that looked at all. And I left it on the video to show you how easy it is to correct. You can just grab your black paint again and go right over it, which is exactly what I do. And then I let it dry before attempting to add the lettering again. And this time I just used my signature handwriting. If you don't trust your handwriting, you can print something off of the computer, collage it down, and then paint over that just like we did with our collaged elements. I have a tendency to forget to sign my paintings, and then sometimes I find that I'm pinched for space, so I decided to sign my painting at this point too. And I recommend you get in the habit of doing it earlier in the process rather than later. I decided her cheeks needed a little something, just a little extra pop of color. So I grabbed my Caran d'Ache water-soluble crayons, and I just went a little bit over her cheeks just to kind of tie in that bright eye color with a little bit of a cheeky color. And obviously no one has purple cheeks in real life, but you can play around with this. That's part of the whimsy, right? Sometimes I'd like to add a little bit of spatter, paint spatter, intentional paint spatter to my paintings. So I'm covering my girl's face here, and I'm grabbing a brush with a very, very long bristles, and I'm getting the paint extremely wet. And then I'm adding just a little teeny tiny bit of white paint to it, and I will just tap the brush with my finger gently to let the paint drop onto the painting. It's a very light touch. A little dab goes a long way, and I think it adds something to the painting. Not everybody likes it, but I think it's sweet, and I do it at a couple points in the painting. The video is sped up quite a bit while I do the handwriting. It's something that takes me a long time. I'm very careful about it, and if I try to talk while I'm doing the letters, sometimes I end up forgetting a letter. So I did take a fair amount of time making my letters go where I wanted them to go, and so this is very fast, very time-lapsed for you. I definitely encourage you to find words that are meaningful to you. You do not have to copy my words. This is just personal to me, and it's something that makes the painting very unique to you. So feel free to go off-roading here. After I removed the tape on this girly, I realized that so much of the pink was showing underneath that I decided to expand the black of her hair up over the top and to the edges, to expand it to the edges of my paper. I totally did not have to do that, and you do not have to do that. So just decide, for yourself how you want to handle that. I added a teeny weeny bit more spackle, or splatter, I guess you would call it, and brightened up my fish just a little bit more, and voila, she's all finished. I hope you enjoyed doing this little art project with me today, and if you did, I encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more fun paintings.